All right, I just started the broadcast.
Awesome. There we go. Starting to see people come in. Welcome, welcome. Also, I am going to have to go back here.
Welcome, everybody. We see people joining. Thanks for being here.
All right. We'll give it probably another minute or so. Ladies, you want to get started? Awesome. Shani, unmute. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's program, which is our launch for the Campaign for Equal Dignity. My name is Nicole Moore, and I am the Director of Education here at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. It is my honor to moderate today. We're just going to have a conversation with you all. I'm joined by my colleagues, Jill Savitt, Shani Drake, who is our Director of Public Engagement and Marketing here at the Center, and Jill Savitt, who is our CEO here at the Center. So good morning to you, ladies.
Good morning.
So when we first conceptualized the Campaign for Equal Dignity, the Center was responding to the COVID pandemic. We wanted to educate people on the systemic racism that had made certain groups of people so vulnerable, not just physically, but financially. We saw more than 40 million people find themselves without jobs. We see over 109,000 Americans who have died. A disproportionate amount of those people who have died from COVID were African American. And we wanted to answer the question, why are so many Black people dying? There were other issues though. We started to see school systems transition to online learning. And with that, we saw gaps in access to educational resources. Then we had primary elections that were pushed back in many states, including Georgia. This pandemic laid bare in a new and really startling way how people's fundamental human rights were not being upheld. And so when the Center designed this Campaign for Equal Dignity, we did it to galvanize a movement. We wanted people to affirm the core rights and values of our democracy. Then 11 days ago, George Floyd was murdered. His killing followed the murders of Breonna Taylor, who would have been 27 years old today, and Ahmaud Arbery, and the incident in Central Park with Christian Cooper. The responses to these events has been an eruption of anger and sorrow and frustration. And at these deaths and discrimination, to be sure, but the anger and the frustration is also looking at how such things happen with no consequence. Black Americans and their allies are now demanding justice, not just for Mr. Floyd, but for all Black lives. So we find ourselves in a moment where we have an opportunity to address systemic racism that has impacted the Black community in every aspect of our lives and throughout history of our country. We have a chance to reimagine this country. What will that look like? And so today, that's why I'm so pleased to be joined in conversation with Jill and with Shani, not just to talk about the campaign, but also its purpose and what we can do next. So welcome, Shani and Jill.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
So Jill, let's dive right in. We have this campaign. Can you briefly explain what it is at its core?
Yeah, so I really appreciate your opening remarks. Excuse me, we are at a moment when we can reimagine what this country is. And can we actually make it a more perfect union? You know, we look at our founding documents, the bedrock documents of this country, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, all of these principles, which we have to admit have not included everybody.
Mm-hmm.
All all people are created equal, but they're certainly not all treated equal. And people have rights before these documents write them down. People are born with human rights just because they're human. And then we have these laws that now have not included people. Well, it's said that there's nothing wrong with democracy that can't be fixed by what's right with democracy. We would like to make that true. And at this moment, when we can reimagine who we can be, we believe that human rights provides the way forward, and that these rights exist and they have to be enforced. We tell a history in our center of a time when the laws were not fair, were not just. And we tell about individuals who organized and mobilized and made the law fair. The problem now is that it's not always enforced fairly. And so we, the people, it is up to us. And in this moment of reimagining, the center wants to play a critical role as a hub, as a catalyst to help people join this attempt to make our democracy more perfect. And so that's what the campaign is at its essence. It did start out as a response to what we were seeing in COVID, and now is to include the police brutality issues. But you have to remember that COVID, its disproportionate impact on African Americans is because of systemic racism. It's because a community was made more vulnerable in its health because of a chipping away over time, a disinvestment in communities, unequal access to resources. And so we've got to get to the root of the issue. And that's why we've launched this campaign. It's got these 5 areas: justice for all, health security, economic stability, health. I'm sorry, the slide changed and I was reading them. But it's got these 5 areas: education, where we feel that we can make a difference if we galvanize people and give actions, information, trainings and experiences, and resources. And so that's what the campaign aims to do, is to help people see how they can roll up their sleeves and flex their civic muscles at this unbelievable moment in our country's history.
And you talk about the unbelievable moment. We have seen so much unrest, rightly so. People are feeling many things, and we've seen protesters flood the streets across all 50 states. But they're doing this, and this virus is still out there. Like, what can we do to support those who are on the front lines fighting for justice?
It's hard. I think we are seeing every day feels like an eternity. So much happens, and overnight you wake up to an entirely new set of news. So we now are worried about the military of our country storming the streets and harming American citizens, American military harming American citizens. That's not legal, that you cannot do that. And so we have a whole bunch of things corresponding at once. I think it is unbelievably important that to support the protesters and also their right to protest. That is a core American value and right. And so as many people as possible need to make that known. You need to do it in your friend and family groups, in your workplaces, and there are ways to support them financially. They're easy to find online, and we have them or will have them if they're not up there already on equaldignity.org. But to show our support and our solidarity with protesters is enormously important right now. There are also ways to get them masks, to make sure they can socially distance, do social distancing as best they can as they are out there on the front lines, protecting all of our rights. Because the right to peaceful assembly is a right that we all have. And they're being stopped, prevented from doing it, harms us all. Yeah. So it's enormously important for people to show their support for what people are doing out there on the streets.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shani, typically our visitors come to our museum, they draw inspiration from the activists of the movement, the civil rights movement. Can't do that right now. So what is it we can do in this moment to inspire people?
So just to give a bit of context around our pivot to digital programming when our state was put under quarantine due to the coronavirus, It took us a week. We've had programming ready and available to people. We wanted to continue to engage with our community, to continue to grow our community, and to continue to have people learn about these important civil and human rights defenders and the work that they're doing. But as week after week, as we internally and as a nation started learning who coronavirus was disproportionately impacting, we saw that coronavirus was laying bare the inequities, the disparities, and the disparate treatment of Black people in this country. We saw that Black people were disproportionately being contracting coronavirus, dying from coronavirus, losing their jobs because of coronavirus, not being afforded the right to federal resources for their businesses due to coronavirus. And so we internally had to grapple with that as an organization. Concurrent to that, at the beginning of this year, as a marketer, our marketing campaign is the More Than A campaign. So that campaign was built to highlight the civil and human rights defenders, contemporary civil and human rights defenders, outside of the typical descriptors used to tell their stories. But in addition to that, we as a center knew that we wanted to be more than a museum. So in this moment, that is what we have to be. And that is what we are doing through this programming. So in this moment, our programming is a catalyst. And it's just the starting point. I implore everyone who is joining us today, everyone who sees this webinar in the future, to not use this moment to check a box. These programs are not here to assuage guilt and fear. These programs are to give space to those people who are doing the critically important work of ensuring economic security, health security, access to quality education, the right to vote, and justice for all. And it is our duty as an institution that tells the stories of civil and human rights defenders that we continue to uplift these voices and amplify them. So we hope that this programming, we use this moment, the substance of these programs and this campaign to spur you to action. And as I said, the programming is just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to have various actions that we are going to encourage our stakeholders, our friends, our community to engage in, because we have a moral obligation to see that every human being in this country and globally are afforded these rights. Additionally, if our programming is causing some discomfort, if these conversations are uncomfortable for you, good. Sit with that, interrogate it, work to understand why you are uncomfortable, and then use that to move yourself to action. I, as the Director of Public Engagement, I want to, again, implore everyone to not use this moment to check a box and feel as if you've done what needed to be done. We want you to engage with this programming and then use your voice to ensure that we don't fall back into the status quo. It's essential that we use this programming, this campaign, and this moment to affect long overdue and imperative change in this country.
So just to talk a little bit about how we've designed this campaign. The first step you take is a pledge. And the pledge is saying that I commit. I'm going to commit to doing a range of things. I'm going to get your emails, and if there's a program, I'm going to come to it. The programming that we're designing is going to be about issues, the 5 issues that are the central ones of the campaign. We're going to probably lead, the first several are about justice for all and voting, because those are 2 hugely critical issues right now. Next week, we're going to have a session with Fair Fight. That is the organization founded by Stacey Abrams here in Georgia, and it's about making sure that no one is disenfranchised. We're going to focus in particular on absentee and mail-in voting. But very important, with the substance, where you get background on the issue with these programs, there's going to be some how-to. How can you get involved in making sure that mail-in voting can happen and that everyone's vote is counted? So they're going to be pledging to help us is pledging also to learn how you can take part. So when you take this pledge, you can read all the things that you're pledging to. It's an agenda that we hope our leaders will also pledge to. We're going to ask you to contact your leaders. we're going to ask you to contact them a bunch of times, because there are protesters right now on the streets and they are making our displeasure known, but they alone can't fix. Our protesters, they're not responsible for fixing the problem, nor do they have necessarily the power to do so. So that's up to us. If you're not out there on the street, you need to be, and even if you are out there on the street, you need to be working your email and your phone and your text. You can even drop by your local office of your legislator. You know, think about when the last time you talked to your elected leader was. When's the last time you said, "Hi, person who works for me," because they do. Our elected leaders work for us. I want to know what you're going to do about people being evicted from their homes because they can't pay their rent. I'm not sure if you all can hear that, but we here in Georgia are in the middle of a massive thunderstorm. It's a metaphor, as our background soundscape. So you might be hearing some thunder, and we're seeing a little bit of lightning. I think it makes everything we're saying all the more true. So we're going to ask you to call your leaders and call their offices. And yeah, we can give you a script. We can give you text to send. Those messages are way more powerful if it comes from your heart. The most powerful is a handwritten letter that is sent right to their office that people open up and see, where you put your sincerity and your authentic story down on paper and send it to them. So we're going to ask you to do a fair amount of that. And then we're going to highlight organizations who are doing this work. As a museum, we're curators. So we're going to curate some content for you and highlight the group of advocates, human rights and civil rights advocates who are doing this work. And we want you to support these groups. We are an advocate for smart advocacy. It's one of the main things we do. We're also going to provide some trainings and experiences for police departments. We have great programming. We bring the Atlanta Police Department, all the rookies, and through every year, and we give them a training. We do a yearly 2-day seminar for senior law enforcement officials, where we introduce them to their historical counterparts in the 1950s and 60s and talk about what their historical counterparts did. And we talk to them about their role as civil rights defenders. That's first and foremost what our police are supposed to be. So we train them on that. We're going to bring that online, all that training, so we can reach more police departments. We're working on that right now. We're going to train people to make sure their workplaces are diverse and inclusive spaces for people. That we see a lot of corporations talking about how they want to be diverse and they hire diversity and inclusion officers for their companies. But we have to see what the effects of that are. That's not action. Hiring someone to address the issue is not in and of itself a result. Change in the workplace is a result. And so we are going to have programming we're designing right now, corporate diversity and inclusion trainings where corporations can learn about the steps they can take to show that they are making concrete change against the values that we're seeing so many companies put out there in the world right now, that they stand with the movement for Black lives. But we're going to help them make it real.
That is incredible. We have a lot of work ahead of us. It's exciting. It's kind of a nervous energy because this is new, but it's necessary. And I cannot wait to see really how we can act, how we as an organization can create change, but also how we're going to help activate others to create change. So much is happening right now. Like the news has been insane this week and so much has happened, but it feels like we're on the cusp of great change. We are watching Confederate monuments come down left and right. People who have long been silent are suddenly speaking out. And it just, the historian in me sees what's happening, but it really feels different this time. Do y'all think that we're actually, like, that we actually might see the world change? Either one.
That?
You know, if democracy is supposed to be the rule of the people, for the people, by the people, that must include all people. People of all races, creeds, colors, ethnicities, sexual orientations, genders, socioeconomic statuses, and any other categorization that is used to marginalize people in this country. I feel personally, as human beings, it is our moral obligation to ensure that every person is afforded the right to live a liberated life. I do find hope in the midst of all of the very real danger we find ourselves in as Black people in this moment, being disproportionately impacted by a pandemic and confronting systemic racism, and that in this moment we're choosing to carve out humanity for ourselves. We are choosing to cry out collectively and have our humanity and our collective trauma acknowledged, and that we refuse to allow the extinguishing of our collective selfhood. I find hope in that we're choosing to hold up a mirror to this country and forcing it and the people of this country to reckon with systemic and institutionalized racism that is endemic to this country and that continues to exact real harm against Black people every day. And I am encouraged that we are not in this fight alone. The uprisings that we've seen across the country are not just here, they are global. So it does feel different. It does feel like there is hope for potential change. And I think I find hope in this moment that we are uplifting and amplifying the voices of the marginalized, the disinherited, and dispossessed in this country. And that we as an institution are making sure that we do our part to center those voices, to center those stories, so that we can work towards effective, long overdue, and lasting change.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that it's an unbelievable moment we're in where nothing is right now inevitable. We don't know where this is going to lead. You know, you look back on history and you're able to say the things that happened that resulted in the outcome that happened, and that's hindsight and it's 2020. But we're right now, you know, journalism, the news is the first draft of history being drafted right now. And I feel enormously hopeful that more and more people are feeling that they have the power to influence that outcome. And I'll have to tell you that there is no guarantee that any of this will change in the right way. We have to make it so. And that requires everybody coming together. We've been getting a lot of calls from people about, I especially have been hearing from a lot of white people who want to know, what can I do? I want to do something. I would say, because my colleagues, I'm hearing from a lot of them, I would say, do not ask your Black friends and colleagues what you should do if you're a white person. That is adding to an enormous burden that Black people are feeling right now with all that is happening. So I think it's very important for white people to start to come together and figure out ways to fix what's gone on. It largely has been created by white people, the situation we're in. It's decisions white people have made and actions they have taken. And so it's really important for white people to come together and propose ways to fix it, and take individual action towards fixing it. And so, for instance, that is one of the programs we will hold, is space for that kind of conversation. I urge you all to put in the chat section right now, questions you have for us, and program ideas and action ideas that you want us to include in this hub. Our website, we want it to serve as a hub of resources, organizations, actions, programming. We're gonna have a list of resources. It's started up there already. How to talk to your kids about racism and what's going on, what to do in the workplace, readings about the truth of our history. You know, I think a lot of us are taught in our schools in America a version of US history, but it's not necessarily the truth. It doesn't always include everybody's story and perspective and how the impact it had on a range of people in this country. So sources for that. All of that, here's the campaign is designed around these 4 core areas: programs, actions, training, and resources. And so if you're looking for this information, we're the hub for you. But Nicole, maybe we'll open it up to some of the questions that people are having.
Absolutely, because they are coming in like gangbusters. So I have let's start with Dave. Dave asked, will the campaign provide us with the tools to activate and mobilize our friends and family?
Yes. As I previously stated, we will have programming, but after each programming, our goal is to at least provide all of those who attended, all of those who will watch later, at least 3 actions that you can take in your community in order to affect the change that we are talking about, that we are seeking, and that we are looking to realize. So the campaign is not just programming, but it's also providing resources, it's also providing you the tools to advocate for yourself, for your community. So we will definitely have those available. We will definitely be communicating with all of those who join the campaign. So the first step, if you have not already, is to join us in this campaign, to let us know that you are interested and do want to do this work in your community so that we can realize a better democracy and a better nation for every person, for all people. So yes, we definitely will have those resources available to everyone who participates and is interested.
Pam is asking, she's asked a series of questions. She's asking if we'll have a list of vetted Black-owned businesses. Are we going to be educating police? The education for police is great and new for businesses is great, but how about the media? Are these going to be pieces of the campaign?
We had not had Black-owned businesses as an idea. That's a fabulous idea. We will look for the people who are expert on that. I think it's really important for people to understand that Atlanta, we had a congressman on a recent program this week, and Andre Dickens, and he was saying that Atlanta is an economic powerhouse for Black business owners, and it's got Black leadership. And very often you see the African-American community going to Black stores, Black dry cleaners, they're using their economic power in the Black community and in the white community, but you don't often see the white community spending its money in Black-owned businesses. And so I think it's a really important point that has to be a two-way street. And so I think that's a fabulous idea, and even to have a program and some actions on it. Great, thank you.
Darius is asking, what's the best method for us to seek out elected leaders in our respective counties, cities, and states?
We have a solution to that. Shawnee? Sorry.
Oh, we have a tool that will give everyone the opportunity to look up your elected leaders by your zip code. We will provide we can provide drafted language for you to speak to various issues that are important to you and that you'd like to see change happen in. We also encourage you to use that database that we'll be providing to write your own letters, to write about the issues that you feel strongly about. And we will be providing this resource to everyone, especially if you've already joined the campaign. You'll be receiving weekly emails about how these things can happen, how you can find this information, and what you need to do in order to connect with those, with your legislators, with your local legislators throughout the state, or throughout whatever state you're in, because this isn't just local to the state of Georgia. This is national. This would be something, a tool that anyone, anywhere in this country can use to find their local elected leaders and connect with them.
So Shawnee's talking about this software that we have that will allow you to do it. So just to drill down a little deeper, we have this pledge. The way that your ticket into this is to sign the pledge. And Cam, our colleague, is controlling the screen. Cam, can you bring us back to the screen? The pledge that we're asking people to sign starts off that we pledge, and we ask our elected leaders to pledge to support and advance the following. And then we go through a number of issues. And what we're asking our constituents to do is to take the pledge themselves and then ask their leaders to take the pledge on justice for all. And we write down what we think that means, especially in this moment of coronavirus. And you can read this on our website, equaldignity.org. So the first is justice for all. And we say, for example, on health security, right now for health security, to uphold the rights of all people, is that you have to ensure widespread, free or affordable access to quality care for people and COVID testing. You have to do this in particular with deliberate extra attention for under-resourced and at-risk communities, because we have seen the unbelievable impact coronavirus has had in those communities. And then you have to ensure that healthcare providers have the necessary resources to provide care safely. That's the minimum. We're setting out a minimum, and we think these are pragmatic, reasonable, they respect rights, and we want you to ask your leaders if they will pledge to do this in each of the areas, so that you'll see health security, you'll see economic stability, you'll see voting rights. We're gonna spend a lot of time on voting rights in the near term, because this pandemic happens during an election year. And so that's our program next week. And we hope everyone will sign up and register for it immediately, now or after this call, because the idea that not everyone will be able to vote safely is a huge issue in our country. We're not going to get the leaders who uphold human rights and the values of human rights. We're not going to get those folks in power unless we can vote for them. And so our campaign is going to go heavy on voting rights in the near term, just to let you know. Nicole, other questions?
I think we have time for about one or two more. This one comes from the UK, and they want to know, how much do you think your resources are going to benefit those trying to educate themselves from abroad? So how can we help our international audiences campaign on our behalf? How can they educate themselves?
You know, it's so interesting. The United States has long held this idea of itself as an exceptional nation. And I think we're seeing what's made us exceptional is not necessarily what we thought in many cases. It is true that since World War II, the United States has been the greatest champion of human rights advocates around the world, fighting for freedom, has funded them, has supported them, has gotten them out of trouble when their repressive governments have attacked them. In recent years, that is just not the case. The United States has divorced itself from the international system and is not playing that leadership role as it once did. So I think I would love to tell our colleagues, our friends in other countries, that they can look to the United States right now. But for the first time, I would ask those in the UK to ask their governments to use their influence with our government, and to use their influence with our government to discourage the use of military force on citizens. For very long, we have always petitioned our government. Human rights activists in the United States have petitioned the United States government to weigh in with governments with whom they have influence around the world to advocate for human rights and to protect human rights defenders. That's been one of our keys of critical success, actually. We now might ask you to do the same for us, is to help us put pressure on our own government. You know, for a long time, we've been the only country with the death penalty. But one of few. There are 3 or 4 countries in the world with the death penalty. And we've put pressure on our government to change that, but other governments putting pressure on our government and using their alliances and using any leverage they have with our government on aid or trade or other kinds of issues to say, we'd love to do this with you, but first you have to change X or Y. You could help us enormously in that regard.
Thanks, Jill. One final comment before we go. Amy brought up an extremely important comment. What mental health resources, or will we be helping with collecting part of the actions and part of our resources? Will we help kind of curate a list of mental health resources? This is a moment where we really need to practice self-care, and will we be able to help people with that?
Again, that's a fabulous idea for us.
Yeah. I think
that would be an enormously important role for us to play as we're putting up these other resources, is to provide those as well. Just so you know, we're in the middle of a 6-part webinar series on health and human rights. I don't know if either of you can rattle off the web address for that off the top of your head, or we could put it in the chat. And it's looking at mental health in particular. It's looked at how white supremacy has affected people's mental health. It's looked at how various mental health issues in the African-American community, other communities, young people. So it's a 6-part series, and they're all available online. And that is, I know, not what you're asking. It more outlines what these issues are. But I take your point, and I think it's an excellent idea that we will get on, is to put mental health resources in our hub.
Final one, Libby asked if we're going to be working in concert with other organizations. We definitely will. We are partnering with organizations as we develop programming. We are reaching out to our partners that already exist with us, so that, to your point, we won't be reinventing the wheel, but instead we're going to be using this platform to advocate and then amplify those who advocate as well. Well, Jill and Shawnee, this was amazing. This was great. I feel like we are witnessing history in the making, and this campaign is so, so important. Again, we encourage everybody to sign the pledge, to be on the lookout for actions you can take, to keep sending us your suggestions, keep sending us what you want us to see, keep encouraging and pushing us. This isn't something that's just going to stop when the summer ends. This is a new phase for the center. This is going to help us really become more than a museum. And we can only do that with your help.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going to have Fair Fight Georgia join us. It's going to be fighting for democracy for all. We encourage you to get out and vote. If you have not, early voting ends in Georgia today, but Tuesday is election day. We encourage everyone to exercise their right to vote as safely as possible. Jill, Shawnee, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of our folks on this call are in Atlanta, where we're based. As you all know, our museum is still right now not open due to the coronavirus. We are still debating when we are going to reopen. We only want to do it when it's safe. For a long time, we have been working toward being more than a museum, as Shawnee had been saying, moving from a kind of attraction to an institution. Coronavirus has pushed us enormously in this direction. And so we are, in many ways, shaping what the center will be. And we want your input on that. We really want to be responsive to our constituency, to the people who have supported us. Maybe you're new to us and you don't know much about us. We're going to have a virtual tour online soon, so you can learn about the kind of inspiration that we provide in our center. But we are more than just a building. We're more than a museum. And so we want to take the power of place that people feel so intimately when they come to our museum and bring that out to the wider world. And we need your help to do it. So please join us. On our website is an email of how to get in touch with us. Our campaign reads that email. So please send program ideas, actions you think about, resources. If you know about mental health providers, send them to us. If you know about corporate resources, send them to us. We want to be the place that people can come and find this information. And thank you. Thank you, Nicole, for hosting us, for moderating.
Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you.
I miss seeing you all in person.
Yes.
Soon.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Check our websites, both civilandhumanrights.org and also equaldignity.org, to catch up with what we're doing. And we will see you hopefully next week. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.